currently Sunday. It's been a couple days since I last worked on this, but I do have the turbo off to the side, and we are seeing if it's going to be smoking outside of the manifold. But right now, it's not. There's no smoke coming out of the manifold right now. What I'm doing here is checking if it's smoking from the turbo or smoking from inside the motor. So I'm gonna let it warm up, usually until the point where it does start to smoke, and we'll see if it's actually there, or if it doesn't smoke at all, then we know it's our blown turbo. But I'm gonna give it about like 10-15 minutes. I'll let the car run for another 20 minutes or so. It wasn't leaking outside of the manifold, but it was leaking a lot out of the turbo. So we know that the turbo's bad. But what I didn't know at first is that this turbo, it's a single scroll. You see that? It's just a full open port. But down here we have a twin scroll turbo manifold. So this means that you can either run a single like this, or you can run a twin scroll, which these 3 cylinders will spool up one side, and these 3 will spool up the other. So I'm actually going to be in the market for a dual or twin scroll turbo, so we'll see what we can find. I got the turbo in from CX Racing. Here's the instruction manual, the gasket for the twin scroll. I believe that's for the turbo drain, possibly. Some padding. This is the turbo itself. Let's see if I can pull her on. All right. So it is a gt3084 or 82, I believe. I think it's a 3082. These are just fittings. We have our water fittings, our banjo bolts, the washers for that. This is the drain. This is using looks like a -10 for a regular hose, but I'm gonna be using the AND lines that we already have. And I believe this is an adapter for the feed. Anyways, getting onto the turbo, here is my compressor wheel. Output, I think it's 2.5 inch. It is twin scroll, dual ball bearing, so it should be spinning. Oh, it's all right. Anyways, one cool thing about it is that it does come with a 3-inch welded V-band onto it. So, oh, that fucking rolled that way. I am gonna be able to use the same exhaust on here. It was a T3 housing, or a 3-inch V-band over here. So I should be able to use the exhaust still. I'm gonna be taking this off, but I believe the output on this one was 2.5 also, so I should be able to keep this intercooler piping also. From the looks of the turbo, I am gonna need to clock it. The original turbo, or the turbo that I have on there right now, this is facing straight down. So I gotta clock this. It does look like my center housing is fine, because I have my turbo feed right here, and then my drain down here. So that looks like it's fine, because you want the oil feed and return to just be vertical with each other. So feed in and then return down. And then these are going to be the 2 for the coolant. So I got to record this on my iPhone because my GoPro died, but took off the compressor housing, just 6 13mm bolts. That came off. Used a 10mm wrench to just loosen up the 6 bolts that hold the compressor housing onto the center of the turbo. Now what I have to do is clock it this way. It was already clocked perfectly, but this is the fitting for the oil feed. This up here is, I believe, 3 or 4 I believe it's 3 An. But when it was over here on this side, this part of the compressor housing wasn't allowing it to screw in properly. So now over here, where it's obviously lower, there's no restriction for it. So that threads in nicely. I am going to be using thread sealant or plumber's tape, whatever you guys like to call it. I'm going to be putting that onto here on this side, and then onto this side with the hose. But I'm just pretty much prepping this turbo. Here's the plumber's tape put onto the extension piece. You want to be careful and not put any of that tape over this area. You don't want to block off that hole. Now all I got to do is just thread into there. The instructions doesn't say anything about this, about clocking this and moving it that way. I'm just assuming that it expects you to clock it depending on your turbo, and then for you to just see that. But if I just tighten it that way, what was going to happen is that it was slightly off, and then it was going to cross thread these. So it's a good thing that I paid attention to that before I actually tried to just slam it on in there. Here you can see the turbo mocked up. Again, I had all this loose so then I could center this. what you want to do is just have it straight up and down. So your feed coming in straight in, and then your drain going straight down. Now what I'm going to do is just pull this back off, tighten up these bolts over here, and then remove this, clear up some space over here, and get it ready to actually fully bolt up. This is kind of a bummer, but the dash 10 from the previous turbo isn't going to work with the new turbo. The mounting holes are not lining up. Not the end of the world. Gonna see if CX Racing has another one, but in the meantime, we're gonna be throwing this onto the manifold. Just bolt this up with a gasket, provided obviously, and then just route these coolant hard lines, and figure out where the hoses are gonna be routed. One thing that I've been neglecting to do is clean up these threads, but since the turbo's off, is the perfect time. All I did was just hit it with a drill with a wire brush on it. Hit those threads, hit these over here, and then I'm going to be putting anti-seize onto it just to make sure that it doesn't get stuck and strip out next time I have to take it off. If I have to take it off. Hopefully not. Fingers crossed. I got to wrap up here because I have to get to class, but as you can see, I have the bolts all the way bolted down, all 4. So this is fully on here. Got to get some of that plumber's tape just to put this onto here. Otherwise, so again, waiting for the drain. But in the next clip, you guys are going to see me put the coolant lines onto here. Flange from ATP Turbo over here in Hayward. Got a dash 10 with the same holes over here. All this lines up perfectly. That lines up fine. Bought a gasket with it. Gonna use these bolts, put it on. I'm gonna be recording with my phone just because my GoPro, I don't have a light on it and it's already dark, as you guys can see. Fuck daylight savings. I'm gonna bolt that up and then I'm gonna get this turbine housing on. I haven't been recording that much, but got the water lines routed. So this one comes down this way over here to the front of the water pump, or the side of the water pump. This other side comes down around here, over here in this little space, and then that will run to this over here. That goes all the way back to this other port. I'm not gonna keep it like this for that long. I'm just doing this for now, just to make sure that it runs fine. I am gonna be getting AND lines I'm probably gonna connect or change this to an AND fitting, that barb to AND, and then run an AND line over here into this, and then run an AND on that side one. But this is just temporary. This thing tells you to do is to fill this up with oil. So I just max that out. Then you just want to spin the shaft just to make sure everything is lubricated on the inside of the turbo. You don't want to have any dry spots, especially on the first startup. But after this, now it's just time for the compressor housing. And pretty much got the turbo fully bolted up. Still waiting on the 4 90-degree fitting and then the hose clamps for this hose. But got the exhaust bolted up. Is just a 3-inch V-band. Got this little intake boot on here. Little intercooler coupling just with a HKS filter. Also got this in the mail. The intercooler, the 2-inch to 3-inch, because it is a 2-inch output from the turbo. So all that's good. So it's pretty much ready to be started. Finally got the 4 fitting onto here. Got that other coolant line all routed up. So theoretically I should be good to go. I did have to tap off of this boost pressure from the manifold, the one that's right over there. It runs over here to the blow-off valve. Just tap that off over here because there's no more port on the front of the turbo anymore. But I can't start it right now. Obviously it's late, so I'm just gonna start it tomorrow. But it looks sick in here. What I'm gonna do now is just priming it. I have the fuel pump off. I'm just gonna be cranking it over just to let the oil prime all the way through. So we should be good to start it. Fingers crossed. Let everything get up there. That's quiet. But now pretty much what I'm gonna be doing is checking if there's any leaks for the oil or the coolant. Just making sure it's all fine, and that looks pretty good so far. So I moved the Supra to the driveway. I wanted the radiator to be the higher point of the cooling system. I just gotta let all the air blow out of there, or come out of there. But sounds pretty good. Just got back from the first test drive, but this turbo is super responsive. Like really, really responsive. I don't know if it's because I switched from single scroll to twin scroll, or that the size of the turbo, or that it's dual ball bearing, but that shit right there, mint. I do have to retune it. I'll try to have the GoPro on tomorrow morning when I'm going to work, just tuning it while I drive. Hopefully you guys can hear some pulls when I do that, but the turbo flutter on this now, shit's crazy. It sounds so much better. So I'm gonna get you guys on this headrest right over here. Hopefully that it's a good enough angle and that you guys can hear the turbo spooling. But let me let you know, it spools hella nice. But yeah, let's get on the road.
Oh, yep, this is him right here. God damn. God damn.